So we are already here towards the end of the season, and the penultimate episode, as we know, is a very important one in terms of what's going to shape up to be, I'm sure, an explosive finale come next week. And obviously, we have been recapping the series each and every week, providing our thoughts and our reactions to everything that's gone down. And so, before we dive into spoilers and before we talk about all of the details that happened this week, we're going to just start off this conversation with quick big picture thoughts about this week's episode, and then we'll dive into the nitty gritty. And so, with all of that out the way, man, I will pass it to you. What did you think about this penultimate episode of House of the Dragon season 2?
I think it was a pretty darn well good put together episode, man. There's things that I feel like are finally happening. There's certain timelines and inside storylines which I've been feeling like have been kind of lingering for a while. In fact, have been kind of taking place throughout the entire season without feeling like we move forward too much. And I actually feel like this episode was like, okay, let's move some of those pieces. And because of that, it made me feel a little bit better on to what's to happen next episode in the finale episode. But also because of that, I enjoyed it, man. I think there was a lot of needed momentum in this episode that was had, and things were pushed forward, and so I'm really glad to see that. I think there's a lot of shocking things here if you don't read the books that have happened here. I don't read the books, so there was a lot of stuff going down that I guess speculated on how it would go down or what would happen. But yeah, I was glad to see some of that stuff play out too, man. Some theories and some things. I'm like, oh man, I hope this thing happens. Some of that stuff came to fruition, and so I was really happy. I think to see some of that stuff go down. Emma Darcy, man, this girl, she be acting. I mean, there's just so much there that Emma Darcy does that still feels, I think, really good with the character of Rhaenyra. That feels so true to everything that she's doing. Everything continues to come full circle too. Whenever I think there's a problem or something going on, there's always she's always able, I think, to tell the story without saying too much all the time. And so I really appreciate everything that Emma Darcy is still doing on this show for sure. Overall, man, very decent episode. I enjoyed myself, and I think this is like you said, I think it's gonna set up a pretty big finale here come next week. So I hope that's right. They still got to stick the landing. There's still some things that I think that need to make it satisfying for an ending for this season. But again, as a penultimate episode, I think they did a lot, and I think they moved the needle more than I expected them to.
I like this week's episode quite a bit. I think the pacing was really, really strong, in particular this week, which has been somewhat of an issue, I think, for this entire season. The pacing has been a little bit off. I attribute a lot of that to the fact that they are filling in gaps that just weren't present in the books. There's not as much source material here. And in particular, with Rhaenyra's character, a lot of what's happened this season has been kind of created and invented because in the books, just after doing some browsing, she's largely sidelined. And I think that that
Mhm.
explains a lot of this season's my feelings, I guess, towards this season's treatment of particular storylines and characters. A couple of weeks ago, I was saying that the stuff over at Team Green was significantly more interesting than anything we were seeing at Team Black. And I think a lot of that is due to the fact that they just didn't have as much material to work with for Team Black, but they had to obviously do many things with Rhaenyra. You can't just sideline pretty much your lead character for an entire season for the sake of just adapting the books. And so there have been some challenges, of course, but I think with this episode in particular, largely focusing on the events at Dragonstone, it was really, really strong stuff to obviously continue the journey of what Rhaenyra is going through and just all of the trials and tribulations to try to come up with some sort of army, which a lot of progression was made towards that particular direction this week. But
Mhm.
then also, I think obviously doing things in a pretty surprising and spectacular way, not just doing things that were conventional or by the book. The way that we sort of got here towards this crescendo that's been building, it was certainly a spectacle to say the least in this particular episode. And so I really really enjoyed it for all of that. But with all of that said, let's go ahead and get into this episode. So if you've not seen the penultimate episode of House of the Dragon season 2, this is your official spoiler warning. Go watch it and come back and finish out the rest of our conversation. And we'll just start at the top, the beginning of the episode where we left off things last week. Adam is now becoming a dragon rider after Sea Smoke went through what she went through in last week's episode and decided to leave Dragonstone. and determine who was going to be her own dragon rider, because Sir Darkland didn't measure up. And so she went and found Adam. Adam is now, I guess, in possession of Sea Smoke. But of course, Rhaenyra's like, who the fuck is this? Who is this guy? Like, I need to pull up immediately and I got to start asking questions, because we can't just hand out dragons without surveying and figuring out, like, who are you, bro? Like, what do you mean to me? And that's exactly what she does. She goes to the beach, she finds Adam, they have a conversation, and she asks about his parentage and who he is. And he withholds that he is the son of Corlys Velaryon, because we know that he is a bastard son, but ultimately he pledges his allegiance to Rhaenyra. He doesn't want any smoke with her. He's like, this dragon chose me. I didn't call for it. This wasn't my idea. This dragon came to me, but I will still pledge my allegiance to you and ultimately fight on your side. And so we're seeing this journey begin for Adam becoming this dragon rider, becoming a very, very important fixture in all of this. And they've done small scenes with him throughout the season, small interactions between him and his brother, and then, of course, him and Corlys. And I think, if you didn't read the books, you were probably wondering and suspecting, like, well, where are they going with this? And of course, last week they sort of paid that off in a big, big way. But now we're seeing him choose sides, essentially, and now become effectively a dragon rider, which is so important to the side of Dragonstone and Team Black. And so, what were your thoughts just seeing this opening sequence and seeing the showdown between Adam and Rhaenyra?
I love how it just kind of opens and they're there staring off. Like there's no lead up. She didn't fly in. He didn't fly in. It just we kind of blink and there's like a stare down on the beach between these two dragons and these two people. I really like that skip in time. I think it made sense. But wow, what a crazy predicament to be in. I think for Adam in particular, who again has one, like you said, he is a bastard son, but he's also, I think, been looking for some kind of just place in life, like as a lot of common folk are, as a lot of the his brother seems to be very, I think, comfortable with it, what he said to even Corlys in this episode, seeing Salt. He just kind of wants to sail and do his thing. But Adam is, I don't know, always felt a little bit more ambitious, even in the conversations that we're having. And it's kind of crazy that even just having that ambition, literally a dragon landed on his lap, like literally just pulled up on him, and all of a sudden he's being called to greatness. I think that is insane. But you cannot blame Rhaenyra for looking at him crazy, because one, who the hell are you? Two, why do you look black? And you got a dragon? Because that's, to me, that's kind of hard to explain specifically when there's like no Laenor's involved, and it's like, what is that? Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, where did you come from? This doesn't make any sense. So I think it was right for Rhaenyra to question what Adam had going on here with the dragon behind him. It's really insane. So I'm actually still impressed. Rhaenyra is like still as accepting of that as she is, but again, it's thankful to Adam in him being able to bend the knee so easily to Rhaenyra, that gets him that makes kind of everything okay. Rhaenyra believes him, and that's pretty much it, man. But I think it was a really cool scene to start off. It's like a different idea of what it means for dragons to stare at each other. This one is very unknown versus one that is legit the queen. So I thought that was kind of cool showdown before we got into the nitty gritty.
It was good tension to just start off things too, because you have these two dragons also behind both of them, Sea Smoke and Cyrax, I believe is the other one that's called, that was with Rhaenyra. And it's like, oh, this is where we are now. Like, dragons are staring down other dragons. Make one false move and that's your ass. Like, these things are very, very tense, and there's a lot of tension. And obviously, it's hard to trust and know exactly what is the truth and what is accurate. They didn't have DNA tests back then, so we're kind of just going off of people's words in terms of what their
You,
parentage is and all of that stuff. Like,
we
no
need a Game of Thrones
ancestry.com.
Mari.
Yeah, I
We
did.
need to get Mari out here.
They need something, because right now we're just literally asking questions to try to figure out what's going on here. But I think it was just great. It was great to obviously see this, and what it ultimately did was kind of, I think, make the light bulb go off in Rhaenyra's head. She was like, oh wait, we have the potential to find more unexpected riders. Like, this was kind of a part of the plan, but to see that it went down like this was like, oh, this actually can become a thing now that we actually move forward with. And basically this whole thing becomes like, well, now let's raise an army of bastards. That's our plan. We can move forward, raise an army of bastards. And she utilizes Mysaria, her right hand woman, pretty much her MVP of this whole thing, to basically find other Targaryen bastards across Westeros. And basically Mysaria is like, I know of at least like 80 80 of them. There's quite a lot out there. There's plenty to pick from. We
Yeah.
just got to figure out a way to reach them. And so basically, Masseria is able to create a plan alongside with Corliss, and they utilize basically communication methods to reach out to everybody to say like, yeah, put the word out. Like, we're looking for dragon riders. You got to come back to Dragonstone. We got some questions to ask, but this is a very, very important thing. I think that sort of punctuates what this whole season has really been about. And it's really
Mhm.
been the focus on the small folk in this entire situation. Just the fact that they've taken such a front seat, I think, to the entire issue and the developing war that's at hand. And we even had an entire episode entitled Small Folk, just to show like how important it is to have people on your side, have communication with the people, and ultimately try to control the narrative of what's happening here. But now we're taking it even a step further and employing them to be basically the people that ride what we would equate to be the gods in this universe. They reference the
Mhm.
dragons as gods. And so what are your thoughts on just that idea that's been, sort of a running theme, for this entire season? But I think now with this episode, really with the past couple of episodes, I think it's actually bubbling up to the surface and really making itself more present here.
You know what I love about it is that's the tide of Game of Thrones. That's who Jon Snow is. Is who the hell is this about to ride this dragon at the end of it? You know what I'm saying? It's like, how did we get there? And so I really love these concepts. I think of where, like you said, the you have to care about the small folk, because without that base of the pyramid, there is no top, right? How can you be king or how can you be queen if there's nobody underneath you to rule? And so I love that. I think Rhaenyra at least still had, again, some of that instilled in her from Viserys versus Team Green. The small folk is now shooting them in the foot. They didn't care about them. Now that not pertaining to them is shooting them in the foot, because now that's the Dragon Riders all of a sudden. What, the small folk is the Dragon Riders? Now y'all in trouble. Y'all done fucked up tremendously. So yeah, I just really love that concept and how the turn tables, man, and how everything comes out. And Team Green, I know they about to be shaking in their boots, but again, it really starts with the small folks. And so I really love, again, that concept, because that's what it's about, because it pertains to real life too. You know what I'm saying? These are like very obvious parallels, the social commentary of what can happen in real life as well. So I think it's a good thing to talk about, and I'm glad they use it so heavily, I think, in the season.
Yeah, it's the perception of how you view people within the society, and of course, in a place like King's Landing, which is clearly based off of a class system. The more royal that you are, the family that you're born in ultimately dictates your placement within the city. And we see the levels within a place like King's Landing, where you have the richest and wealthiest of the wealthiest living in these very luxurious, lush castles, essentially
Mm-hmm.
overlooking this huge capital city. But then everybody else on the streets who are working, or they might be in brothels, they might be trying to look for food, all sorts of things. They have to look up at what is considered royalty in the city. And so just even that dichotomy, it actually kind of reminds me of Parasite when you think about that movie, just like
Yeah,
how the
that's
people that
exactly it.
the people that are downtrodden and disenfranchised, just the places that they live within the city, they're kind
Mm-hmm.
of in the gutter compared to where these other people are. And so just even that realism and that ideology of just like how that works from a structural standpoint, I think that obviously is played into it. But then of course, as you noted, the people that are obviously running things within inside of King's Landing and ultimately dictating what's happening, they haven't done a great job to try to curtail that and try to change that narrative. They've only added more fuel to that fire and done pretty ridiculous things like starving the people in King's Landing, causing riots, unintentionally
Mm-hmm.
blocking them in the city. They're just pissing everybody off, and everybody's kind of at a boiling point where they're like, we're sick of this. This is done. This
Mm-hmm.
is over. And now the people have turned on them, and we're seeing that a few of these people actually have a means to say, oh damn, I could potentially fight in this war because I might have some of this Targaryen blood within me. I might be able to ride a dragon. Like, let me go pull up and see what that's about. And so it becomes a really interesting difference point, I think, between these two sides of the same coin, essentially. But speaking of King's Landing, it's not a huge episode for the characters there, but we do get a couple of big things. I do want to talk about Laris really quickly. My guy Clubfoot, he's essentially going to Aegon, who's obviously still reeling from all of his injuries after he was taken out by his brother. And Laris is like, yeah, man, this physical therapy, we got to speed this up. Like we gotta move faster. You gotta get better soon because ultimately I think we now know Laris is wanting the proximity to power, and he sees that Aemond is not fucking with him at all. Aemond's like, I really have no use for you. That obviously makes Laris feel a certain type of way, and so now he's definitely hitching his bet a little bit closer to Aegon and trying to figure out a way to like get this man back on his 2 feet to try to obviously overthrow Aemon when the time is right. But
Mhm.
as we see, I mean, Aegon is he's in no condition. I mean, he looks awful. I think his cane breaks. It sounded like his leg might
Man.
have broken. I don't know what something broke, and I'm like, you might need to sit back down. And even the Grand Maester is there, also trying to help. But it's tough. But we do see that Laris is using some of these ulterior motives, some of these sneaky tactics, obviously, to just ultimately try to motivate Aegon to say, like, yeah,
Yeah.
obviously this is terrible. You're never going to be the same man ever again. That's completely out of the window. However, you still got to fight. You still have to put up a
Mhm.
fight and become the man as closest to what you used to be. So, what were your thoughts on just seeing that relationship start to, I think, blossom a little bit more here between these two in particular, knowing that Laris is obviously using some of that leverage in that relationship, but also, I mean, kind of tending to Aegon, who's extremely vulnerable at this point.
Man, Aegon is paper skin and glass bones right now, ain't he? That boy is going through it, dog. I
Terrible.
just I didn't know what was happening. And what's so eerie, I think, about his appearance right now, but it definitely looks like Viserys in his sickness, but at a way younger age. You know what I mean? It's like your hair is half gone, you can't walk really. It's crazy to I think to see how quickly or how that resembles each other. It's very uncanny, I think, in that way, or just very weird to look at. But Laris, man, it's hard for me, I think, to understand completely what Laris wants with Aegon because one, I think there is Laris has to know because he's smart. Laris has to know though, and he can't truly believe that Aegon will ever completely rebuild what he had. Right? He can never completely rebuild his authority. There's no way they're going to let this crippled dude who can barely move become full fledged king again. I don't think that's a thing, and I think Laris knows that. But there is another thing there where we know Laris and Aegon aren't like the greatest people ever, but it's almost like he's taking the time to find the humanity in him, and they're taking the time to find humanity in each other, kind of, even though they may be again kind of crippled in this specific way. It's really weird and really interesting. So yeah, I don't know exactly what's going on there, but it does seem like Laris almost just kind of wants to not be Aemond in a way. And I don't think Aemond hates Laris at all, but also I think he knows Aemond's not going to let him move any further at all either. So that might be the play. You know what I mean? Like Aegon might let me move up a tier or something like that, but it might not happen there. And so yeah, it's really interesting when Laris is the master of whispers, or one of those whispery kind of people, right? We've been comparing him to Littlefinger a lot, and he gets the news that like somebody's on the dragon, somebody's on sea smoke, and he's like, you know what? Let's just let that news go into the wind. Like we don't need to. I don't need to hear any of that. Let's just let that happen, and that's so interesting because that feels almost the opposite of what Littlefinger would do. You know what I mean? Littlefinger would be like, oh word, you ain't gotta tell me twice. I'm about to use that information. But here, Laris is like, let's just let that go. You know what I'm saying? Let that go by the wayside. So I think it's really interesting how Laris is playing all of this, man. And I think him and Aegon will end up having a very different relationship beyond I think anybody else on the show. I think only maybe they at this point might be able to understand each other and maybe even trust each other to some degree. We'll have to see when I think Aegon comes to a little bit more.
Yeah, Littlefinger was a messy bitch for sure.
Messy boy.
Messy as fuck. But Laris doesn't quite strike me as messy. I think a little bit more calculated. Littlefinger was calculated, absolutely, no doubt about it. But Laris, there is something a little bit more there. We have seen some shades of vulnerability from him in terms of him recounting his past and his upbringing and obviously his disability, essentially, just all these different things that have made him who he is. the guy's still a menace and still very much somebody to be, fearful of and mistrustful of, I would say as well. But it's interesting just knowing that there is somebody by the side of Aegon to say like, oh no, we got to get you back. We got to get you back together. Even if it's physically exerting you beyond your own limits, like this actually might be harming you. If we're being if we're keeping it completely honest, I don't know how good
Hmm.
it is for you to just completely try to rush through something like this where you clearly need rest and relaxation and every doctor known to man. But at the end of the day, they're on a ticking time clock because Aemond is acting in all sorts of different directions, sometimes erratically, sometimes unpredictably. It's really hard to pin down just what he's going to do and ultimately how that's going to affect everybody around him, especially the small council. But who's not on the small council is Alicent, who is basically purposeless now. She is just kind of at a place where, you know, maybe she's a little bit relieved. She doesn't have any responsibilities. She doesn't have any work commitments. Her
Hmm.
sons are doing their own thing. One son is, practically bedridden. The other one is just being a crazy motherfucker every which way he can get a chance to. And so she's like, yeah, I think I'm going to leave. I think I'm just going to bounce. My dad's not here. There's really nothing for me here. And so she decides to leave the Red Keep. She takes Sir Rickard with her, and they're like, yeah, let's go to Kingswood. And Sir Rickard is
Hmm.
like, maybe we should bring some people with us. We should probably bring some soldiers, some people a part of the Knight's Guard, the King's Guard to protect us. And she's like, no, we're not doing that. It's just gonna be me and you. And we get to Kingswood, and we just kind of see her just get in the water and kind of bathe and just like let loose and just relax. She just, just I think takes a load off and just like, you know
Yeah.
what? I'm kind of helpless. I can't do anything. I'm gonna take advantage of this moment, do a little bit of self care, do
Hmm.
a little bit of R&R, and that's really kind of all we see. We see her do this cold plunge into the river there in Kingswood. But it's interesting to just see her sort of relinquish power and relinquish control. I think we've often seen her try to do everything that she can to dictate how things are going to maneuver and move. But now she doesn't really have that influence at all anymore. And so she decides to, I think, just let go and move on, at least temporarily. What were your
Hmm.
thoughts on just like her taking what seemed like to be, I think, a drastic step to just completely remove herself from the Red Keep and sort of be in a place of being unsure as to whether or not she's going to come back?
Oh, she is sick of the shit. She is sick of everything. And I think she has finally hit a point where she realizes her efforts and everything she does goes nowhere. It only ends up hurting her in the end, which is funny because before this we do get the maester helping her with a cut on her arm. You know what I'm saying? She's like, this place is dirty. It's never clean. There's a rat over here on the other side, and we were just talking about nobles and these castles and things like that. You tell me there's a rat in here, bro? Like nothing is clean. I'm done. Like I can't keep putting forth this effort, pledging my fealty and my loyalty to these people, and I get cut. What's the point? What's the point in the end? So I'm just going to leave the castle. I don't have to do this. Nobody's going to miss me, right? I mean, they're not asking me to do anything. Even when I give my input, nobody's listening. Who's going to miss me if I leave the castle? I don't blame her. It makes a ton of sense to me. And what I think is interesting is, again, a lot of this was between about her and Rhaenyra and the different parallels. I think that they have. I think it's interesting that in one way, Rhaenyra is like making an army. In another way, Allison's like, I'm just gonna go swimming, bro. Like, I'm just trying to be in the woods. Like, I'm not dealing with any of this. I think it's interesting how they kind of like went in separate directions in that way. There was a moment where Allison was trying to put her best foot forward, but now she's over it, man, and she's sick of losing children and in husbands and all of it, grandkids. She's tired of it all, and I think you really can't blame her at this point. So I think it made a ton of sense. I am curious where this leaves her for like really the rest of the show in general, because I'm like, if you're going to be like this, what else is there? But I think that the time that she's taken is it makes a ton of sense for what she's been through for sure.
Yeah, she's down bad. She's down real bad, but I don't blame her. I don't blame her. Get out while you can. Get out while it's somewhat of a clean effort in doing so. Get out before the shit really hits the fan. I think the reality is we know she's going to get roped back in some way. We also have
Mm-hmm.
to remember Otto and just sort of like the clock that he's on. Been waiting on Otto to return for the
That's
longest
true.
now. He's
That's
went
true.
another week without returning. It maybe happen next week, but that's also probably going to be a factor in terms of what gets her back inside the Red Keep, inside of King's Landing. But I wasn't mad at it at all because I'm like, yeah, a lot of this is on you. You kind of made your bed in several of these situations, especially with Kristen Cole, who, by the way, thank God, didn't see Kristen Cole not one time this week. That was wonderful. But she kind of made a lot of mistakes up until this point, and placed her trust probably incorrectly in people that she thought would have her back, who ultimately did not indeed have her back and have her best interests. And so, yeah, she's been ousted, and I think she just kind of is holding that L temporarily, living with with that loss, and she'll find her way back at some point, but in the meantime, just take that PTO, sis. Just take that time off. You probably are better on the sidelines at this point. It's almost like a leave of absence. Like somebody forces you to say like, you should probably take some time off. Like you're not doing a great job at this job anymore. You probably should take a little bit of time off, and we'll call you back when we're ready, when we feel like you're
Right.
good to go. That's kind of what it feels like with her. We should talk about the stuff that happened at Heron Hall, which I think this might be my favorite part of the episode because Lord Oscar Tully, man,
Yeah.
comes in
Yeah.
and fucking
Oscar.
he comes in and fucking steals the show.
Hell yeah.
He has a really really intense showdown with Damon. He's the new Lord Paramount of the Trident, and he's followed in to Heron Hall by the other River Lords, and he basically is like, you know what? I will honor my grandfather's oath of loyalty to Rhaenyra. I will honor that she's Viserys' heir, and I will offer my allegiance. But Daemon, I got some problems with you. You are a savage barbarian. You're not a great guy. You definitely have done some evil, vile shit ultimately. And he gives it to Daemon. It's kind of a situation where the chickens come home to roost for Daemon, because we did see Oscar Tully earlier this season, and they had a little bit of an interaction. But yeah, Damon kind of gets what's coming to him here. He takes another L this week. I mean, Damon has been taking L after L this entire season for the most part, and this is definitely no different, I think, in this particular situation. But Oscar holds his own, and they have this interaction, and the barbarities ultimately that Oscar brings up that Damon committed in the Queen's name. But basically now Oscar Tully is responsible for the well-being of his own house, and this whole feud between the Blackwood and the Brackens has been crazy, and there's been really atrocious acts committed between the two. But in exchange, obviously, for committing this allegiance, I mean, he's like, you still gotta commit your allegiance to me, and ultimately, what I need you to do is condemn Sir William Blackwood, because he's done some crazy stuff too. I need you to go ahead and off him and kill him immediately. And Damon doesn't really hesitate. He moves with the swiftness, brings that
Mhm.
sword out and chops that head completely off. It looks like there might have been some regret after he did it, but the action itself, I mean, it took him no thought, maybe like 1.2 seconds to actually go
Yeah.
ahead and move forward with it. But what were your thoughts on just this whole interaction? Because it was definitely some electricity between these two, and just like some really, 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 I think, exciting dialogue and conversations. And to see Oscar Tully, like this younger guy, just really kind of hold his own amongst everybody who's giving him shit. I mean, he really kind of did the damn thing, and ultimately, once again, sort of just drives home what Damon has been going through this whole season, just confronting all of these terrible things that he's been responsible for throughout his
Mhm.
entire history.
Man, he had this Oscar had like that Lyanna Mormont energy slash Arya Stark energy, man. Like this young kid that's coming in and like, look, y'all gonna listen to me. He said it. He was like, I may be young, but look, we gonna do some shit out here. I love the way he was moving, man, because there was a moment where I think when him and Damon were talking before, he did kind of show, Damon kind of, I don't know. Damon kind of shows him who he is, and he does not necessarily cower. I don't think that's the word, but he does like listen to him, and it's like a level of what word am I looking for? Not respect, but like he was not power either. Dang, what word am I looking for? I don't know. But yeah, there was just a different level there. But here he was like, we got to be about that action. This is what we're doing here. Either you kill this dude who I know he was working for you, doing some crazy shit, or you don't. None of these people are going to question you at all. How about that? I think that was brilliant. I think he's such a smart kid. Because a lot of times when I think it just in the history of Game of Thrones, when a lot of kids this age are thrown into the positions that he is, they don't know what to do, or they rule too weird, or they're like, I don't know, there's something wrong with them. But it seemed like Oscar has a good head on his shoulders. By the way, fun fact: all of the Tullys are named after Sesame Street characters. It's like Grover Tully, Oscar Tully, and his brothers. His brothers are literally like Elmo and Kermit. I think crazy, right?
Oh no.
Yeah, I know, ridiculous. I don't know what George Martin did that, but yeah, man. I love that. I love that it almost kind of read like one of the Harrenhal things a little bit when he was cutting his head off. It almost felt like one of those moments in Harrenhal where he had to fight one of his demons or something. I was like, huh, that's interesting. But this time it was in real life. So I thought that was a really cool kind of parallel they made that feel like here. But like you said, he doesn't hesitate. This was a moment he was like, he has to listen. And right before that, he almost wasn't listening. You know what I'm saying? So I love that he had to put Damon on his toes in that moment, and Damon was forced to make a decision. But like you said, he didn't hesitate. It was fast. It was very like Damon not to hesitate. I think in that way, but to have to listen to a kid kind of put him in his place, man. And you never see Damon get put in his place like that, especially by no child. I thought it was pretty good.
Man, they've broken my boy down just so significantly this season. It's been quite a thing to watch, but it doesn't stop for him here. I mean, he is once again confronted by the ghost of his brother Viserys, who appears differently than how we saw him last time. Now we're seeing a very decrepit, broken down Viserys, really how he looked in the days preceding his death. I mean, he just looks very, very sick. But we do see him one last time, and basically within this vision, Viserys admits, like, I never wanted the crown. This is not something that I wanted to possess because ultimately it crushes anybody who wears it. It really overtakes them and consumes them and destroys them essentially. And do you still want that, Damon? Because you've wanted this for so long. You desire that throne. You obviously have a thing against Rhaenyra because she is in your place. But do you still want it, knowing what it does to people? And I think the visual is also a clear indicator and reinforcement of, like, look what it did to me. Look what it did to your brother. It pretty much killed me well before my years,
Mhm.
well before I should have left this earth. And it's done that to so many people. Now Damon has to once again sort of rest with this question and I guess wrestle with this ideology as to if he desires to even be in that particular position anymore. What were your
Yeah.
thoughts on just seeing that, that sort of idea hammered home again? Because I think we've seen historically, in both Game of Thrones and again here, I mean, people on that throne, first of all, it's either going to kill you or somebody else is going to kill you because everybody wants that position. It's going to be one or the others. So why does anybody want this to begin with? It's such a crazy concept
Mhm.
to just see example after example of how it's really overtaken people and destroyed their lives. But obviously, it's become this holy grail that people still seek out and try to chase.
I think a lot of times people don't see, especially I think from the outside looking in, the royal court or the king or whatever is happening. They don't allow people, I think, to see the weakness in that position, because how can you, right? Like, I'm the king. You will never be able to see all the hardships and stuff I go through, because if you do, maybe you'll view me as a lesser king, right? And I've always thought of it in that way. Like, imagine if the king was able to like go to everybody and be like, "Y'all, this shit is hard, and this is why." Like, I cried yesterday because this thing happened. I didn't want to have to make this hard decision. Do y'all see me losing hair? Do y'all see me getting sick? Do y'all see me like I have to make really hard decisions? And I feel like that vulnerability and that transparency has never been there, because of the idea of strength has overtaken that whole concept of what being king means or what having a throne means. And so this is, I really like this vision a lot. And another reason why Viserys is just like one of the coolest characters we've ever gotten, because he is so honest, at least to the degree he could be, and as vulnerable to where he could be. But here he's telling Damon, like, why would you want this? Do you look at me? Like, literally look at me, bro. He literally dropped the crown. He was too weak to hold it and he dropped the crown. Like there's so much symbolism there, but he's like, dude, why would you? Do you still want this? Do you see what? It's pretty insane, but it's something about that thirst for power, man. Something about that hunger for power that blinds people to that throne that makes them want to get there. But yeah, like I think that was like one of the most telling scenes in Game of Thrones. Period. Like that's it. That's the show. Why the hell do you want this? It's crazy. So yeah, I thought it was a really tremendous scene. It was like 2 minutes. I was like, dang, this is one of the coolest scenes I've seen in history of Game of Thrones. I really enjoyed it.
Viserys, what a king. What a
A
king, man.
king.
That was the one true king of this whole thing. He's been the best thus far, I think, of anybody.
Yeah,
But
like ever. Like
yeah.
ever.
Aemon's
Mhm.
up next in terms of who's gonna
Oh my
perish
god.
at the hands of, being on the throne. Like
Yeah.
what crazy thing will happen to Aemon, because Aegon is already charred to damn near death. We've seen how the crown is basically taking him out. What's gonna happen to Aemon? We might have some answers real soon here. But to sort of shift things back to Dragonstone, um, basically this Dragon Riders program, it's hot in the streets. They put the word out there like, yeah, we're recruiting. We need people, and Mysaria, she instructs her people on where to find the Targaryen bastards. Ultimately the word spreads throughout the city. We see Ulf in a tavern, who's
Mhm.
basically boasting and bragging about his ancestry, and all of his friends who are drinking with him, they're like, oh yeah, bet, come on, like let's see you do this, like go for it, like make this happen. And he obliges. But then on the other side, Hugh, a character we've been sort of briefly checking in on throughout this entire season, he's essentially now in a place of grieving the death of his daughter, which has happened off screen. But ultimately, once he hears that this Dragon Riders, I'm gonna call it a program. It's funny to call it that, but I'm just gonna call it a program. Enroll in the Dragon Riders program
Niggas
today.
got drafted.
They definitely got drafted. There was a sign up, enlistment sheet, all sorts of shit. But when Hugh hears about it, he tells his wife. His wife's like, no, don't do this. You can die. That's literally not a good
Mhm.
idea. But he ultimately knows that he does have Targaryen blood. He's the secret
Mhm.
cousin of Viserys, and so this is
Yeah.
actually a really good opportunity, possibly, if he can overcome this challenge. That ultimately might bring them rewards and bring them good fortune and good wealth, which he's been long wanting for this entire season. Every time we've checked into him. But then also, Rhaenyra, she's trying to get this whole thing ready. She greets the dragon seeds who arrive at Dragonstone. But then the dragon keepers, they ultimately are like, yeah, we're not with the shit. We're not supporting this idea of allowing small folk with dragons. And so they essentially leave the
Mhm.
castle. They're like, sorry, sis, this program ain't gonna work for us. We're gonna go ahead and take our ball and go home. And they're speaking to her in Valerian. It's all sorts of stuff going on here. What did you think about just that dissension? Knowing, I think that this is a really crazy plan. They are questioning, like, Rhaenyra, what the fuck are you thinking? This is probably not a great idea. Like, is this really sound to do this? And ultimately, it's also kind of what's the word? Blasphemous? I guess it's kind of blasphemous because
Yeah.
they do consider these dragons gods. And so, like, why are we
Mhm.
why are we allowing small folk? Why are we allowing these people that aren't supposed to matter, that don't have our blood, to even have this opportunity? This doesn't make any sense. What did you think about the dissension of just, these different factions in terms of how to move forward with this plan?
It's so interesting because Rhaenyra, as crazy as all of this sounds to everybody in the world, Rhaenyra is like, what the hell else y'all want me to do? And that's a good point to me. You know what I'm saying? It's like, we don't got no troops on the ground. Damon ain't came back. We got one dragon, two dragons, me and Jaceres. what what else is happening here? Like, what do y'all want me to do? And I think this last ditch effort, it's so important because it's it's stepping outside of the box and thinking outside of the box. Nobody else is doing anything else, so I'm going to take matters into my own hands because nobody else will come up with anything smart, right? So I really commend Rainier for doing it because I think she knew for sure that people were going to look down on her on this decision to do this. She knew the I don't even know what to call them or what they're called, like the Valerian dragon people that keep the dragons, dragon keepers. I don't know what they're called actually. But I had a feeling she knew that they didn't really like what was going on here, and they would leave them by the wayside. But she had to make that decision anyway, and she was trying to explain that to Jaceres too. Like, No, one. First of all, this is your idea. I'm going to do this thing that you said I should be doing because it actually, if it works out, we're on top. And we need to be on top right now because if not, all of this hurt and the sadness and this whole war is just going to continue to keep going. So unless somebody else has a better idea, this is what I'm going to do. So yeah, I really respect her for making that decision. But man, so interesting that I think so many people were like, hell yeah. And I don't think they knew what they were getting themselves into. I'm still convinced, like Rhaenyra didn't give him a rundown. Like, you may die. You may get set on fire. You may get eaten alive by these dragons. I feel like she just never gave them the true rundown of what's to happen. And that's why we get like 60 people on boats trying to go be the Targaryen that's gonna save the day. I think it's a really cool visual how like everybody had like dirty white silver hair that was on the boat and stuff. I thought that was really cool thing to see, especially when she walks into the room. It's like, wow, y'all are all probably really my ancestors, but because y'all are quote unquote bastards, just because y'all weren't born into nobility, which is also interesting because my family kind of been having sex with each other for years, but we can't have sex with other people that aren't whatever. But yeah, it's very interesting. I think visual to see all those people in that room. But yeah, it was crazy, man. It was crazy, and I think Rhaenyra was. I think she did what she had to do when the doing got tough.
Yeah, I don't blame people for questioning the shit though. I really can. Even Jacaerys, like he's like
Oh
it's
yeah.
he's like it's my idea, but not like this. Not exactly this way, because also if we do this, then that's gonna like challenge my own legitimacy to it. And ultimately at the
Hmm.
end of the day, I have to service myself. Like I am supposed to be your heir. He brings up the darker hair situation, basically, knowing who his father essentially is. Like there's so much stuff behind that's sort of loaded into their conversation, and then the rest of them, they're just like, yeah, no, we get that this is like a dire situation, but
Hmm.
this is extremely risky. Like this is like the riskiest thing that you can do, and a lot of people's lives are at stake ultimately. But I've equated these dragons, to the atomic bomb a couple of times this season, and I think it's interesting because Rhaenyra, I think her thinking at this point is that, hey, this is an extreme measure. However, if we use these dragons now, and yes, a lot of people will die, what it will do is save countless lives in the future, in the long
Hmm.
run. We have to do
Exactly.
something that's pretty atrocious now, but in the end it will be justified because more lives will be saved than ultimately what has perished here. Will that be the case? That remains to be seen, especially considering what ultimately happens to the Targaryens in this particular story in this universe. But
Hmm.
she is backed into a corner. There really is just no other viable option for her. But once once all of the people arrive at Dragonstone, she leads them to doom and destruction. That's as best as I can put it. Doom and destruction, because her dragon Vermithor, basically the second biggest dragon in this world, only behind Vagar, he is creeping in the wells, creeping in the caves, and ultimately he makes his presence known. And I think if you've been paying attention, we kind of were tipped off that, yeah, like Ulf and Hugh were probably gonna be okay. And we'll get to them in a second, and the fact that they ultimately walked away being able to become dragon riders. But before that, this was a perilous situation. Lots of people died. Lots and lots of people died. And it's a really crazy sequence when you think about it, because on one
Hmm.
hand, not only is it violent and destructive, and we've already seen this not work one time before, like we lost like 3 lives last week, now we're losing like 75 lives, and so we've only just escalated the violence. But on the other hand, Rhaenyra is like, yeah, let's push forward, keep it going, don't let him out, I want to watch. She is very much like, I'm seeing this through, even as painful as it might be, even as destructive as it might be. And it showcases, I think, a dark side to her whole plan, because it certainly made me
Yeah.
question just really the validity of this whole shit. Like, is this really worth it? Like, you just are watching these people
Hmm.
get burnt to a crisp. This is pretty crazy. What were your thoughts on just seeing this whole thing unfold? Because it was, I think, a really shocking sequence, and ultimately, sort of the means to get to the place of having dragon riders sort of emerge out of this chaos and this death.
Yeah, it was scary seeing it because I think we I think that too few times do we see Rhaenyra, I think, able to exhibit how ruthless she can be at times, because she does feel like she has to be this upstanding queen, which is why I think she likes Damon so much, because Damon can go do those things. She's like, go be chaotic for me because I can't do it. And this is one of those moments. It's like, no, this is chaotic, and I'm going to embrace it. But also, this also kind of helps what I think what Jacaerys is trying to say, of like, there's too many of these bastards out here. They might be able to claim my throne. Shoot, not no more. You done burned them all. Where the bastards at? Ain't no bastards no more. Y'all done killed all the lines now. What are you talking about? Y'all got like probably like 5 bastards left out here, in general, which is also interesting. I just thought about this, but when Adam was standing next to Baela, did Baela know that was like her whatever cousin, uncle, something? I don't know.
I don't think
Uh,
so. Probably not.
Crazy. Yeah. I was like, y'all definitely related. Like, look, first of all, look at each other. Y'all both black. And now it's a new Dragon Rider. Come on, something got to be up. You know what I'm saying? Something got to be up. But yeah, man, Rhaenyra, I think she was just able to let loose, and finally able to kind of, I don't know if let loose is the word, but kind of let loose in this way where she hasn't been able to be as unforgiving in some of her tactics as she would like. And this is one of those moments where it's like she could just blame it on like, oh, those darn dragons. You know what I'm saying? So yeah, I think everybody is still right, like you said, in questioning her, like what is going on. It's just a lot of people think this may be like inhumane. Like we're not showing up to that. Like all the dragon tamers is like, we're not showing up to that. Like, no, we're not going to that thing. And I think it's interesting that Vermithor was so much more damaging than Sea Smoke was. Sea Smoke only burned like 4 people. You know what I'm saying? He was out. He's like, I'm not doing this. Vermithor was eating people, setting everybody on
I'm
fire.
hungry, by the way.
Bro, it was so bad. I'm like, why are you still going? Part of me thought he was just gonna leave like Sea Smoke, but he didn't. He just like kept turning up on people. I was like, what is going down? He's like, how dare y'all come to me with these fake ass Targaryens? I thought it was really interesting to see, man. But yeah, Rhaenyra, she had to get out of her system, but also this is a last ditch effort. She's like, if this doesn't work, we are in deep shit. And so I think she just really, really, really also wanted it to work. So a little bit of chaos in her, but also a little bit her wanting to win this war. It got us to this place, man, where Vermithor wants to wreak havoc on everybody else.
I mean, I literally watched this scene and I was like, Rhaenyra, oh my
Yeah, she's wilding.
God, what are you doing? I was perplexed, and the guards are just like not letting them leave. It was brutal to just sit there, and the scene went on and on and on, like it was taking its merry time. And I gotta
Yeah.
credit the filmmakers and the creators behind the show. Like it's a really effective way to just showcase, like, oh my God, this is horrible. This can't be it. This cannot be the best way to go about this. But ultimately it does provide just so much dramatic tension for both Oof and Hugh. Hugh is
Mm-hmm.
definitely just, I mean, he's just like the king of bravery at this point. He's like, you know what?
Okay.
It's all on the line. I'm either walking out of here with this dragon or I'm dead. Like I have nothing else to live for. Essentially, my daughter's dead. So he's like, I'm going for it.
Mm-hmm.
Ulf, on the other hand, is like, I'm getting the fuck out of here, and just like happens to stumble upon a dragon and just kind of gets
Oh
lucky.
Lord.
Because Silverwig, sort of finds him in that particular position. But they do claim the dragons, and essentially word gets back to King's Landing because they see Oof riding Silverwig over the castle, over the city. Aemon's like, the fuck? Hold on, what's going on here? Let me call Vagar. Vagar, big ass bitch, pops out. She's ready to go. She's always ready. Which I always forget how fucking big Vagar is. But when you
It is
see
huge,
the
dog.
massive amount of fucking humanity that dragon is, it's really unreal. But Aemon's like, yeah, we're about to pull up. We're ending this
Mm-hmm.
right now. But then once he gets to Dragonstone, which is like a hop, skip, and a jump across the sea, by the way,
Not too far.
it's like right there.
Metropolis and Gotham.
Basically, just take a ferry, y'all. Just take a quick ferry. He basically sees these 3 dragons. He's like, oh wait, no, I can't do that. Like even though Vagar might be able to take them, I'm not ready for this because Cyrax,
Mm-mm.
Vermithor, and Silverwig are like, try it, bitch. Try it. Come to this corner. Come to this corner right now. I dare you. But ultimately,
Uh,
Aemon retreats, and we see Rhaenyra standing proud and strong. That I guess the plan worked. I guess it all worked out. She now
mhm.
has new dragon riders. Adam is also out there. They're looking strong. They're
Yeah.
looking healthy. They're looking ready for a battle. So, what were your thoughts on just these closing moments in this episode?
What a badass moment. I literally was hyped. Like, this is the shit I'm here for. You know what I'm saying? Like, I'm here for the dragons. And you telling me that they got a whole new fresh team out here. Yeah, Rainier played very dangerous Nick Fury. She had to put together the team, dog. She had to put together the team. But it was really cool to see, especially again after all I guess these characters have been through. Like seeing them I think come together in this way. It was really fast. Like we did this in 2 episodes. You know what I'm saying? Like we really pulled them together pretty quick. And something I think is really cool that if Hugh really is the son of Sarah Targaryen, technically this is like his granddad's or grandmother's dragon
Good
or
luck with
something.
that. I'm not even gonna
Yeah,
try to.
there's too much going on there. But I think that's cool. It's almost like he was meant to have it, if that makes sense. You know what
Mhm.
I'm saying? Like, oh, this is supposed to be a dragon. So if that's the case, if that's really true and for real, I think that's really cool. Ulf, I'm still a little questioning on Ulf. Like, is he? I don't know, man. Like, he stepped on the dragon egg, and Silverwing was like, huh. Oh, really? You stepped on a dragon egg. We still don't know how Targaryen this dude is, but I guess he can go back and tell everybody at the pub slash brothel, whatever that place is. There's a bunch of stuff going on in there, but I guess he can tell everybody he's the dragon rider that he thought he was, or that he was either lying or telling people the truth about. So I think it's really interesting to see off, man. But yeah, that last scene was fire, bro. Vagar is so big that he had to have like a dragon parking lot. Like he had to like leave the whole compound to go pick him up. You know what I'm saying? He said, "Open the gates." I
Hey
was like, "Where's this nigga
yo.
going?" He had to go pick him up on the whole other part of the island, man. I was like, "Yeah, this is ridiculous. This dragon is
This
that
shit takes
big."
time. We just can't call them at the snap of a finger. Motherfuckers have to get in
Yeah.
position and get ready for this. This is gonna take like at least 30 minutes, my guy.
No, that's why we always see like they usually skip the mounting. You know what I'm saying? We usually
Yeah.
just pop up in there on the dragon. I'm like, I'm sure it takes forever to get up on these dragons and to ride them. But yeah, he didn't want the smoke with that 3v1. I really think that's also interesting because if Laris had used the information that there was another dragon rider, maybe something else would have went down.
Yeah.
You know what I'm
Definitely
saying?
would
Like,
have.
maybe he would have known. So
Yeah.
like, yeah, I don't know. I wonder if Aemon's gonna go back and be like, so nobody heard about this. You know what I'm saying? Like, so nobody was gonna tell me that these niggas got dragons now. I love that he's seen it for himself. I thought it was such a good, powerful statement. I love that it was him and Rhaenyra right there. I just think it was a really cool way to end the episode. I thought it was great.
It was marvelous. It was fantastic. Just a great showdown to just show like, oh yeah, now we're in business. Now the shit is
Mhm.
on completely. Rhaenyra, I mean, she's probably never felt this empowered ever since she lost her son at the end of last season. This is just a moment, and to stare down the guy who was ultimately responsible for the death of one of her kids.
Ooh.
It's like, oh yeah, yeah. Look what I'm working with
Mhm.
now, you motherfucker. I'm
Mhm.
coming for that ass immediately. Like she's ready to go. She's ready to go. It was a really fantastic ending. Before we wrap up, any other things you want to point out about this episode? Any other characters that we saw? Any other moments that stood out to you in this week's penultimate episode?
I don't think so. I think uh I really talked about everything I wanted to talk about, man. Yeah, I think that's it. I don't really have much.
No, I think it all pretty much spoke for itself, especially
Yeah.
with the last sort of sequence of events. I mean, the last like 30 minutes really took place at Dragonstone. It was really focused on just seeing if this was all going to work out. But it's definitely going to be a very interesting season 2 finale when we arrive there next week. But folks, those are all of our thoughts on episode 7 of House of the Dragon season 2. If you've checked out this episode, definitely hit us up and let us know what you think.